All right, welcome to the WTF Divorce podcast. Today we are lucky to be joined by Tracy Gould Sheinin. Tracy is a mediator and a parent coordinator in the Atlanta area. Thanks for being on today, Tracy.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, we have lots of questions that come in from our WTF Divorce Instagram. And since we're having you on, we said, let's get some mediation questions because I think I
Yeah,
saw a post that you made that only a small percentage of divorces actually even go to trial.
that's right. Yeah, only about 5% actually go before the judge for a trial. The rest settle privately and outside of the courtroom.
But that doesn't make for as interesting of TV shows and movies. So it has
No,
to be a
not nearly as dramatic, no.
right. All right, so let's get right into it. And first, you can start off by telling us what are the benefits of going to mediation?
Yeah, so mediation fits along with divorce really well because it is private, for one. So you're talking about personal and private issues privately, not in front of an audience of strangers listening to your business. It's also voluntary. So you choose it and you choose your mediator. And then once you get going, you decide the outcome on the issues. So ultimately, you've got a very personalized, individualized settlement agreement that fits you, your family, and your future. And then the third benefit is that it costs less. You can really control the costs by working it out in mediation so that it doesn't spiral out into hundreds of thousands of dollars, which has been known to happen. You can keep it contained.
So once you're on the other side of divorce, you understand these things, but when you're about to start the process, you don't know what to do. I think
Yeah.
people's first move is usually, I've got to go hire a lawyer. Is if you're like to go into mediation, do you still hire a lawyer? Do you skip that part? How does that work?
You don't have to hire a lawyer, no. So every case is individual and different. So for some folks, yes, calling a lawyer first off is the best thing to do. I always say get legal advice, but you don't have to have a lawyer to mediate. Most of my clients actually are pro se, which means they don't have lawyers. They might go get a consult with an attorney, but they work it out themselves, knowing what is best for themselves. And then sometimes along the way, maybe you start mediation, but then you bring in an attorney at some point, always okay. And then if you do start with attorneys, you're likely going to mediate eventually anyway. So it falls into a couple of different places, but you absolutely can start with mediation without lawyers.
And so, what does that conversation look like? It's usually one person is initiating the divorce and maybe has done some preparation. How do you talk to clients about like how to pitch this to your, current partner, soon to be ex? What does that conversation look like?
Yeah, so a lot of my clients come to me together. They're just super amicable. They're ready to do the divorce. They're not happy about it always, but they're accepting of the divorce. And so when that happens, it's really quite a beautiful thing. But that is not always the case, no. So what I ask folks to do is make an appointment for a consultation where we chat about what mediation is, what mediation isn't, how much it costs. And then it's up to their spouse to also do the same thing, to make an appointment and chat with me. So I get to talk with them each one on one, individually from the very beginning. And all of that's confidential from the get go. And then they decide if they want to opt in to mediate with me.
So, both parties are using the same mediator in the case?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah, it's very
exactly.
interesting because it's a different. I know a lot of divorces end up in mediation, but it seemed like you have a lawyer, they're dealing with the mediator, they have a lawyer, the expenses are
Yeah.
going through the roof. I didn't know there
Hmm.
was a
Hmm.
quicker, less expensive way to go about it. If you just get right to it.
Yeah, for your not super complex cases, mediating without attorneys can really work well. Mediating with attorneys can really work well. It's really if it falls into that amicable area, which doesn't mean you always agree on everything or you're coming in already agreeing on everything. That's what we mediate. It just means that your intention is to do this as amicably as possible.
And what does that look like when it's, I guess there's a lot of preparation and then it's go time. Is that over in a
Yeah.
day, a week? What's the experience generally like?
So the way I do it is several meetings stretched out to give people time to do their homework, So yes, there's a lot of prep work on the front end. Gathering financial information is the biggest chunk of homework. So we've got that at the very beginning to look through and talk about. And then there's always more. There's always some follow up. Well, let's figure out what this is going to look like in the future, or let's figure out what the questions are for this account. And then the other bucket, of course, is parenting if they have children. So we're working on the two things together. And the way I do it is I ask folks to meet for a couple of hours, and then we go away to our separate corners to do more homework. The other homework is the emotional side of things. So you've got the business side where you're doing the research, making decisions, but then you've got the emotional side. And it's important to leave room for that, I think, so that you're making the best decisions possible, not jammed into an 8-hour day where you're feeling exhausted and you're making decisions under duress. So for my clients, we meet several times for 2-hour blocks or less if we don't need all the 2 hours. And then we usually come up with an agreement that really is very individualized and thorough, and they're ready to file.
And then you're leaving when that mediation is complete. You're leaving with a signed divorce decree.
Yeah, well, they're leaving with a signed mediation agreement, and then we can look at the court forms together. I can't fill them out for them, but I can talk to them about what goes where on the court forms. So they can take the court forms and the mediation agreement to the clerk of court's office to file an uncontested divorce. And then they get their hearing, and it usually sails right through because everything's already worked out. And then the judge signs the final decree.
Wow, these are like conversations that I wish I had a few years ago when I went through my divorce. And I imagine
Yeah,
everybody, it's like you find all this out too late. So that is our job to help educate people before
yeah,
they throw themselves into this process.
for sure.
So let's get into the questions that we have. First question: what if he doesn't accept the mediation deal?
Yeah, so that can be really frustrating and really tough if you've done all this work to get to a place and you've come to agreement on everything or most things, and the other side backs out or changes their mind. That does happen, and it can be so frustrating. Um, the thing with mediation is it is voluntary. So people do decide what the outcomes on the issues are. They decide which direction they want to go in. So ultimately, they can do that. And that's where the court can be your backup. That's where good legal advice was very helpful to see, what do I do next? We thought we had a deal, but now we don't. What do I do? The mediator, can keep negotiating with the parties to a certain point, but if it looks like folks are stuck, that might be where mediation ends and you move into litigation. But of course, most cases still settle outside of the courtroom. So even after you mediate, if it doesn't settle in mediation and you go talk to attorneys and you go to court, chances are it's still going to settle. So the mediation work you did is still worthy and valid. It just happens later.
Hmm. And this is another question. It sounds like it could be related. Can you go back to mediation more than once?
Yes, you sure can. So maybe you mediate early in the process and it impasses, meaning you don't settle. You negotiate with attorneys, you negotiate privately, you keep working on it. Maybe you even have a hearing at the court or two, and then you go back to mediation and you end up settling because by then a lot of not only, like I said, the homework of the researching information, but also the emotional processing, all that has passed. And you might be seeing the money add up, going to the lawyers and the accountants and financial advisors and realize it's time to settle. So yes, you can always come back to mediation. And then after divorce, post divorce, you can come back to mediation to modify a divorce agreement as things change. Like as the kids grow up or financial pictures change, you can come back to mediation later.
So your first step does not have to be pick up the phone and call the lawyer and start all the wheels in motion again.
It does not.
Got it. Next question we got. How can I amend a divorce decree pro se? And you can explain what pro se means for our audience because I didn't even know right away.
Yeah, sure. So pro se is when you don't have attorneys. So it's when you're representing yourself. So it's Latin for self. And anybody can go to court for, anything without an attorney. Again, good legal advice is really important and helpful a lot of the time. But post divorce, if you want to modify or amend what you've already got signed off on by the judge, you absolutely can do that without an attorney. You can absolutely do that with mediation.
What we've learned is building a team is valuable,
Yeah.
and that seems like that's true in mediation as well.
Absolutely. So with my folks, when it comes to dealing with the house, I encourage them to talk to a certified divorce lending professional, CDLP. They look at it through the lens of the divorce process and can give fantastic advice on what's realistic in terms of what you earn and what you owe and who should keep the house and that sort of thing. So it can be a really critical move to have a CDLP on hand. Sometimes having a certified divorce appraiser appraise the house can be helpful. A certified financial planner, a certified divorce financial planner can also be helpful. So if you can afford it, having a team around you to get you this information is so invaluable because it helps you make smart decisions for yourselves that last into the future.
And like you said before, the emotional part of it. So a therapist or a divorce coach is a huge piece
Yes.
because that's
Yeah.
not really what you're hiring a mediator or an attorney for.
That's right. Yeah. I want everybody that's going through divorce to have their individual therapist. And if you can swing it, a divorce coach is also amazing. Get both if you can. So you've got that emotional support to get through this really hard thing.
And it does. I know that divorce is expensive. That's, one of people's biggest issues with it. But it sounds like if you invest in a team early on, it might even save you money. It can speed up the
Yeah.
whole process because if you
Yeah.
try to just do everything with your attorney, that can really add up. So,
Hmm.
taking some time to talk to professionals and seeing what you need is worth the investment.
Agree. And the best attorneys out there will tell you that also, that I can't do it all. I can give you legal advice, but we need a mediator for this. You should have a coach for that. You need a therapist for this. Yeah. Building a team, like you said, early on in the process will save money down the road.
All right, excellent. This was great. Tracy, let people know where they
Yay.
can find you.
I can be found at claritymediation.net, or my Instagram handle is at claritymediation.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Appreciate you being
Thank
on
you.
WTF Divorce.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.